Hello, everybody, and welcome to Deep Web3 Secrets. This is our first episode, and I'm here with Spirit Surge, my co-host, and we're going to be talking about everything you ever wanted to know about Web3. Spirit Surge, how you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Eiko, how are you? How's everything?
Good. It's good weather here in Colombia. We are enjoying it. We're being productive, and we're working on a lot of things, a lot of different things. And so many people have asked me about a possible podcast. I've been on a number of different podcasts talking about different things. Uh, and so maybe we want to talk a little bit about Web3. What is Web3 and why we decided that we're the ones that should be talking about this.
Yeah, well, that's a major point because there are so many scams and charlatans out there who are tricking people into making wrong decisions or guiding them into uh, projects that are just exit liquidity for those poor people who invest. Um, so considering that, we both, right? If I were to talk about you and myself, we consider ourselves to be on an ethical line of
I think
doing
that's
business.
exactly right. Ethical, ethical. Okay, so tell me more about that.
So, in the olden days, when people would have the bartering system, right? And when there was like little concept of money and little concept of laws, everything was based on trust, right? Everything was trust based. If I'm going to get milk from a vendor, right, I am counting on the fact that he's not going to add water into it, right? Um, that was a trust. That was the wild, wild west back in the day. What is the wild, wild west right now for crypto? That is the current stage it is in right now, where everyone is having disposable income, but they don't know where to invest. They don't know where to put that money. Everyone is just following quick shot influencers who are using their influence and having getting people to invest and then bailing out, right? Becoming rich. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And that is why it is very, very important that even though we're in a decentralized platform, which is the blockchain, um, we have to self-supervise ourselves to remain ethical, right?
I I
One of the
absolutely agree with that. I just want to jump in here. That is so important. We talk about trustless ecosystems, ecosystems without trust, but that's almost a technical term because trust has become way more important. We know the traveling salesman. If you buy something from him, next week he's in some other town. You'll never find him again. The digital world is kind of like that. We trust this guy this week, but as soon as we realize we can't trust him, well, he's already made the money off that brand. And frankly, he might be making another channel with another profile pic to do it all over again. So I think there is a big responsibility for us as people who are in this space, who have exposed ourselves in a certain way, and continue to use our own names. We continue to put ourselves out there, not only to educate people about other people's projects, but educate people about how to do due diligence. It is one thing to say, do your due diligence, but if you don't know how, it's very complicated. And sales are there for a reason. They work. Sales techniques and flashy marketing and those YouTube thumbnails where they get their mouth open. Ah, but if you don't know how to do due diligence, it's almost a disservice to leave that to you. So we want to invite everybody to this podcast. We're going to be doing it every other week to start. We're hopefully going to be stepping it up to once a week, but we really think there's so much to talk about in this space. And the first thing, I'm glad we started with this. The first thing is ethics uh, and trust. It sounds ironic with trustless ecosystems, but trust has become more important than ever. And so, Spirit Surge, let me ask you a question. Are you trustworthy?
Well, so how do you define trustworthy? That's the first thing we have to talk about here. Because here's the thing, my definition of trustworthy might be different from yours, right? Unless, of course, we are from the same culture or we're from the same religion, right? Which has its own specific definition of trust. Keeping that in mind, we are in a space where we have multicultural, right? And there are people, and there's so many people who are not dogs. They all have their own definition, right? But looking at the space currently, trustworthy is defined as someone, right? And this the standard is this low, who is not running away with our money. That's literally how low the standard is when it comes to trustworthy.
Trustworthy
I just
means you
hope,
don't steal. You didn't steal them from me. You might have lost me a lot of
yeah,
money, but you didn't steal it.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's here's the thing, right? Uh, that is the bar is so low. This is the current status of the Web3 space. The bar is so low that the only requirement for people is, dude, I don't care if you don't deliver, just don't run away with my money, right? And due to this skewed concept, right, where the alternative is the government, the centralized system, right, which is equally hard to trust, right? It
Yeah,
is very, very difficult for the common or average man to completely understand or define, is this guy, you know, someone I can trust with all my, disposable income or all my savings, things like that.
absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to find a few terms here. We usually talk about someone who runs away with the money as a rug or a rug pull. And recently I've started to hear the term slow rug. And a slow rug,
Mhm.
I think, is kind of people recognizing that someone not delivering or not following up on the project is another way of maybe slower running away with the money. So we have maybe when it was all in boom, we had a lot more rug pulls, but nowadays I hear a lot about the slow rug. Do you want to comment on the slow rug?
So it depends on project to project now. In Web3, you are to define, there are like 4 or 5 major type of projects, right? First is the exchange service. Second is the, you know, games, games, right? I'm separating games from gamify. That's different. Then there's gamified finance. Then there's decentralized finance or DeFi, right? And then there's the final, developer projects, blockchain projects, where the development is happening. All slow rugs for different for all of these 5 projects, the definition of a slow rug is different. But as a game developer, right, I'm just going to talk about the game part of it, and that is games are not easy to make. They're very hard to make, right? And the reason for that is you have to have so many moving parts together to make sure they are in sync before you can get out a product. Oftentimes, what happens is you have so many things which are ready, but because they are not the whole package is not ready, you can't show it to the world, right? So for a game, a slow rug is defined as someone who is not communicating at all with the updates of what their game is about or what's happening with the game, what's the progress, right? Even if you go into the corporate world, right, where you have shareholders in a company, right, the CEO is required to report once a week back, right? This is how you create accountability. The accountability uh, in a project like games is basically you having or your obligation to report to the people who have invested in your token or in your project, right? On a weekly basis or on a every other week, considering if the update is big. That if you're doing that, it's fine because you're being transparent. Of course, there's a fine line for that also, but that is a topic for another day. Without going too much in detail, um, if you are someone in general who has decided that I am not going to develop any more development into this particular product because of X, Y reason, right? And I am going to milk people out. And if the people are, buying into that kind of marketing, right? That's basically what's going to define as a slow rug because you are not giving any positive, consistent updates. You're just trying to rehash the same thing over and over again. That, in my opinion, again, it's an opinion, changes from person to person. I'm sure, Eco, you have a different definition. That is what I constitute as a slow rug. What do you think? What do you think a slow rug is?
Yeah, well, I like a lot of what you said. Accountability is key. So when accountability starts to fail, I think slow rug accusations start to begin. A note about accountability, I like to say what you're going to do and then do what you said. It's good to do good things, but to establish confidence, establish accountability, we want to first say what we're going to do and then do what we said we were going to do. And I think that's true in and outside of tokens or Web3. That's kind of in the real world. You mentioned the CEO. Um, and traditional companies have worked on this for hundreds of years. And so they do have some advantage in that a lot of the things are required by law, let's say. Quarterly financial reporting is required by law in a lot of countries. So we're in a new space. I think a lot of people do agree that the traditional space is overburdened with regulations at this point. It's hard, even impossible for small projects in some situations. So we're free. We're free to, and then of course people are free to scam or I don't really actually feel like doing what I said I was going to do. Or, life got in the way. And, I've been involved in a number of different projects where even if I sympathize with the reasons, life is real, things happen. Uh, from a project standpoint, you might call it a slow rug because accountability has been lost. They said they were going to do something, maybe they did half of it, and now either they're changing what they're saying or they're still saying they're going to do it, but they keep pushing the deadline. I tend to think that three deadline pushes is a red flag, a really hard red flag. You've pushed the deadline three times now. So I don't know if I have a strict definition for rug pull. I definitely think the term is developing. It's a new term. Um, it's a way to define something that isn't strictly a theft, a rug pull. But I like that you said that it could be different in different sectors. A finance slow rug is different than a game slow rug, and accountability is key. Um, yeah, I think there's some good points there. Now, I just want to jump here. Like, we got some good stuff discussed, but who are we? What qualifies us to talk about this? Spirit Surge, where are you right now? What are you doing? What's your life about? What are you working on?
Okay, so I am completely doxed. First of all, I'll start off with that, right? I am in Pakistan currently, and I've opened up a game development company in UAE, which is known as Surgeon International. I'm a game developer, and with my team, we have developed two games for Hive uh, ecosystem. For those who don't know what Hive ecosystem is, it's okay. We'll come back with, there'll be a future episode that talks about all the ecosystems. You don't need to worry about that. It's on Hive ecosystem. One is a tactics style game called Astro Revelations. The other is a trading card game like Hearthstone, known as Astral Wars. and both of them are in closed alpha. I have the trust of over 350 people who have invested in the project, and I am trying my absolute and utter best that they are not let down. What about you, Alex? Who are you?
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I want to just celebrate that for a second. You are working in the Web3 space. You've made two games and you're in testing right now. That's fantastic. I definitely want to get back to that. Okay, so I'm also doxed. My name is Alex Trapp. You can call me Eco. I've worked for a number of years in tech, I guess you could say, project management or business intelligence. Um, I got involved with blockchain in 2017, and have worked with trying to identify the best practices in this new space. Kind of happened uh, randomly through the things that happened in life, but I found that I could add value to projects by identifying best practices and helping them implement it. In the space that we're in, we get these waves of interest. So all of a sudden, everybody's interested, and then all of a sudden, nobody's interested anymore. And then everybody's interested, and then nobody's interested. And sometimes they say bull market, bear market, or crypto winter. Um, but these are all the same, I think, words to describe the cycle, a natural cycle that I think happens with all development. I think a little bit about the internet. It was very exciting, and then it was definitely a scam, and then it was very exciting again, and then at some point the internet stuck. The internet's here. It's definitely something, although maybe it's not. It's too late to invest, or we don't know. Okay, but all projects nowadays, I think, use the internet to some extent. Now, with the crypto cycles, we get people coming in. Each time there's a big excitement. New people come in and start a new project, and they're very tempted, maybe because they don't have the experience. They're very tempted by some of the same old mistakes that we've already learned. Those of us who've been around for more than one cycle, we actually, that doesn't work. You should think about a different way. We could still innovate, but we should be innovating from the best practices. So I found a lot of value add. I've participated in a number of different projects as advisor or um, project manager, business development. And I also have my own projects. Through that time, I have a couple of tokens. I have a sustainable development fund where we take crypto wealth and we invest it in physical sustainable development here in Colombia, where I'm based. And I also have a couple of, you might say, hedge funds, token funds where I manage. Um, I'm a little more closed about it. I prefer to be the largest investor. So, in a sense, I'm managing my own money, but I'm managing it in such a way this new world allows us to create a separate account, a block separate wallet, and manage it very specifically. I don't mingle my own funds, and that allows, if somebody wants to invest with me, that allows me to manage that as long as it's appropriate for the person from where they live. Everybody, of course, in this decentralized world, in a sense, there's no jurisdictions, but really each person has to manage their own jurisdiction. So I come from it in such a way where I not only the way I work, but also now more generally with this podcast, would like to share with everybody the things that have already been learned. I know that at some time in the near future, there's going to be another big excitement. And I'd like to have some discussions and some things documented so I could, instead of explaining all this again in private to another person the hundredth time, I'd like to say, hey, listen to this podcast because some of the stuff you think you want to do has already been proven to be not such a good idea. So we're putting ourselves out there, but I think in your case very specifically, you have experience delivering. I have some experience managing, and we've learned a lot along the way. I mean, would you agree with that? We've learned some things.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. One of the things actually I wanted to bring up, right? So the people who are getting into these projects, they used to either be employed in a business to business, type of industry, right? But when you come into crypto, it becomes business to customer. That's a completely different ballgame, right? And people need to understand that you can't treat business to customers in the same way like you do a business to business, right? And in a space where the blockchain allows you to, like, allows everyone to see what you're doing with the funds or where your funds are going, right? That adds another level of scrutiny upon you. So for you to make the optimal decision when it comes to communication, right? It's not just communication uh, with with the people who are investing in your project. It's also your own employees or your own shareholders or your own friends who are spending time into your project. And number one thing, besides delivering a project, is communicating it. You could have the best project in the world, right? But if you are very poor at communication, which unfortunately is a huge, huge problem that I've noticed in this Web3 space, where people are just coming in, they bring products in, right? And they're okay products, but their communication is so poor, or the way that they are basically making the project accessible to another ethnicity or another culture is so poor that they end up alienating themselves into a small corner. So yeah, I mean, I've like I've like faced this problem. I speak Arabic, Urdu, Punjabi, right? And English is my fourth language, right? And I've faced a lot of trouble, and I had to do a lot of reading on how to communicate with people, uh, from like my team members who are all over the world. Someone's in Argentina, someone's in Philippines, someone's in the U.S., someone's in France, and you know, and like I'm talking to you, you're from Colombia, right? And I'm pretty sure, um, even though English is your first language, um, you also have trouble talking to people from other countries because you don't speak their language, because your uh, there are cultural differences, the way people understand things are different. So yeah, there's a lot to learn in this space, and it's honestly I'm very, very grateful that I got this experience to learn, because I came across people who are very fast, right, and adding so much value to the project, just by being an investor, right, and just sharing feedback about the product. Whereas I also found people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, who have to be told one thing 10,000 times, right? I'm equally grateful for those people, because I get to go through my product to make sure, okay, how can I make the user experience better? How can I make the user interface better? Things like that. So it is a huge learning experience, and this is a huge undertaking when it comes to Web3 projects. And before you decide, you just blindly jump into any project, right? Without doing your feasibility analysis, without doing your risk analysis, right? Without checking the basic parts. So can I even talk properly in English? Or if I'm guiding this guy, right? Is he from the same culture as I am? Will I be able to communicate with him? Um, should I get a guy to communicate with my customers who might be from other cultures? There's so many things in here that people just overlook. They're just in a hurry. Just, you know what? Let me get the product out. It's a low hanging fruit, easy, fast money, right? There's a token on sale, right? Buy it now. I'll double the price in 1 month, right? So people do that because some people who come into the Web3 space, a large percentage, come into the project looking for a profit, right? Looking for a way to earn money, right? And that's why this kind of mentality has created project owners who are fast, easy, and in most cases, extremely incompetent. Um, what's
Wow.
your take? I mean, you've been handling projects for 30 years.
Yeah, no, well, you made some good points there about cross-cultural communication that I think almost we should do an episode on that. I do have some experience working as a translator, even in the real world, also digitally translation. Um, but what I'd like to attack this from a different angle, which is the idea, and we can use gaming as an example. The idea of making money is almost, I mean, it exists, and making money is great. And obviously, some people have seen some success. I would include myself in that. But gaming is so treacherous because, in a sense, you can buy a game, a traditional game, and you're going to spend some money, and you never expect to see that money back. I don't know what the retail price was for the recent Diablo 4 game. Um, if it was $70 or $80, I'm not up to speed there, but nobody thinks they're
$70.
70, yeah, nobody thinks they're going to get that money back. So there's a space in your brain where you pay for entertainment. It makes sense to you. The challenge I've seen is that when somebody uh, lets a project into that space where, it's natural that I spend money on a game, 60 or 70 or $80. That's natural. Maybe I'll buy the DLC if I like it. And I know there's a lot of games where people can spend 100 or a couple $100, and for their enjoyment. They like not as many people as the internet leads us to believe are streamers who are making money, although that exists. I think it's a small percent. But when the game looks like it could be fun because it hasn't been delivered yet, and I've already opened the door as a gamer to I can spend money on this. The issue I see is the possibility of somebody investing, let's say, $1,000. Now, as much as you might spend on gaming, maybe you got a miniatures Warhammer 40K habit, but you're really unlikely to spend thousands or thousands of dollars on a game. I think what happens is for some money making marketing brain hack, they've entered through the gaming door, and now it's an unregistered security, and they've convinced you to invest one or two or $10,000. That's no longer a game, right? It's like you said, this is an investment opportunity. I hope it goes well for you. It may not. There's always a risk. But I would just say, and this is probably something other people have said, you never want to risk, especially in high risk things, risk more money than you can lose. You should really think about as a person the limits of what you're willing to spend. Would you spend this amount of money on Diablo 4 or a game that you really like? Your miniatures have it. Would you spend that amount of money on it? Or are you only spending that money because you think you're going to get more back? That's a red flag. That's a red flag. Uh, if you are an investor, if you know about taking risks and position sizing, that's one thing. But if you're a gamer and a project is hacking your brain into becoming a, an unregistered securities investor, be very careful. Be very careful. Set yourself limits, uh, and either learn to become an investor or just accept the fact that I'm not going to buy every DLC that comes out. I have limits to what this entertainment is valued for me based on my own budget and my own interpretation of my household income. Be very careful of that brain hack because I've seen it happen a lot of times where people who are gamers get excited and suddenly they've spent 1,000 or more dollars. And how does that happen? It's a hack. It's a marketing brain hack. So I just want to warn people out there. about that particular brain hack because you're already used to spending money on games, but it's usually less than $100 that you would spend on a game, and that's a game that's been developed. That's a game that you can play when you spend that money. So promises of 20x, 100x returns are just that, a brain hack to maybe get you to spend a little bit more than you should on a game that probably most cases in this space isn't out yet. So be very careful there. I mean, did you want to add any caveats to that?
Do you know the phrase I hate the most for gaming projects is "to the moon"? That is the worst phrase you can have for a game.
Yes.
Gamified finance, that's a different, right? But for a game, you say to the moon, you want to take your token to the moon. The game, I mean, just think about it. Your token gets so expensive that no one can get into the game anymore, right? Or it's so expensive to get into the game after that. So, and then it just becomes a case of exit liquidity for the early investors. And games shouldn't go towards that direction. Games should be fun. That is the ideology that was created when games were made, right? And just because we have this new aspect of, play to earn, right? That doesn't give you the right to dilute the game so much that in the end it's all about, right, at least I'm earning from this. And uh, just topping up on that particular point, uh, when you take games like Axie Infinity, where the tokens mooned beyond, uh, you know, like beyond even expectation, what happened was that the early entry in Axie Infinity was close to $400, right? Just to play the game, you buy 3 Axies, it costs you $400, right? And that is an absolute nightmare to deal with when you are talking about games. That I mean, I want to talk a lot about this, right? But we obviously have to pick another day for that. By the way, securities, since you mentioned that, is a topic I think we should discuss because people are not aware about what quantifies as a security, especially people from outside the United States. They don't know about what the Howey test is. They don't know how you are using the Howey test or how the SEC is using the Howey test to define what is security or what's not a security. So yeah, that is a topic I think we should definitely pick for another podcast.
Yes, yes. So this is great. I We have a lot to talk about moving forward. I would say unlimited topics, really, because the space is so wide. So maybe let's take a few steps back. Let's talk about Web 3. What does it mean? What is Web 2? Uh, what is this thing about Web3? Why is everybody, or recently, a lot of projects have been adding Web3 onto their, yeah, hashtag Web3? Um, what does this mean? I mean, you as a developer, I'm kind of hoping for somewhat technical answer to this as first as we build this out. But if I'm not mistaken, Web 2 is log in with Google, right? Log in with Twitter. That's Web 2.
Uh, so Web 2 is where, as a developer, I mean, without being too technical, but it's still going to be technical, right? Um, Computers, they use something known as HTTP, right? In the form of unique web addresses to find information, right? Which is on a in a server on a database. Whereas Web3, the same information is found based on content and is stored in multiple locations, right? So the only difference between Web2 and Web3 is that the information in Web3 is stored in multiple locations, multiple places, whereas for Web2, it's just stored in one location. To further clarify, if I were to take an example, you're taking a Web2 game and a Web3 game, right? A Web2 game is essentially a game where it is taking content from a database within one server, right? And that basically means that 90% of the games, not 90, 99% of the games that are boasting about us, we are a Web3, are not really Web3. They're just Web2, right? The only thing that they're adding is the utility of transactions, right? So what that basically results in is something like semi Web3, where they aren't completely decentralized or their information is not completely taken from all the nodes. It's just taken the main information, like 80% of the information is taken from their own Web2 server, right? And 20% is just taken from, blockchain, uh, different, server locations, stuff like that. So technically speaking, this is what the difference between Web2 and Web3 is. There is literally no other difference.
That is interesting. Yeah, so you're coming at it from a storage side. So if we store the information on a blockchain, we can say like if this node goes down, we can rebuild it. We all the transactions are on the blockchain or on a blockchain. And so we can rebuild it. The information is public, and so since blockchains are decentralized, if any one of their nodes go down, the API goes down, we can access that information. I I really hadn't even thought about that decentralized storage, which probably is the base. I was thinking from a login perspective, like Web 1 was email and password, but even email became Web 2 because now I'm logging in with Google or I'm logging in with Facebook. And Web 3 is I'm logging in with my cryptographically secured private and public keys to a blockchain. I think Ethereum was one of the ones that first kind of made it popular and got built on. Uh, so it's like Web 3, I'm logging in with my MetaMask. But now you're saying semi Web 3, which is putting a quote unquote Web3 login. Log in with your MetaMask and access all the data from our centralized server. So that's
Yeah,
really a
that's the truth of it, right? That's the
right.
truth of it. Because here's the thing. If I were to just take an example of Ethereum, right? They have an API where you can get access to all kind of information, wallets that exist, stuff like that, right? Finance has their own API. Hive has their own API. So you can actually use that information, right? And this information is like terabytes, right? It's huge. Like you can't even like if I were to like try to um, incorporate that data physically in one computer, um, it will be very big, right? That's why you have these mining rigs and all of that. And it would have this huge that's obviously not feasible for the average guy because no one has that much money to pay for the computers and they pay for the extravagant electric bill. So what they do is they basically take information from nodes, right, from the API. We're just going to say API, right? And email itself is what we call SMTP, is essentially just an HTTPS, right? Link, like where you are basically creating your email server where information is stored. Again, it's a centralized server, but the server is not owned by you. It's owned by the hosting company. There is so much intricacies that come down defining what is Web 2 or what can be considered Web 3. So I'll just say it's semi Web 3, right? But true Web 3 is we are talking about an application which takes all of its information from the blockchain, right, or from multiple nodes, right, and does the whole execution, right? So if I were to take something like EOS, or if I were to take something like Hive, or some other bit shares, right, which are delegated proof of stake, all of these take their information from their nodes. They're completely Web3, right? That's how I define them. But if we were to take a game, right? Even if I'm talking about my game, right? When someone logs in, creates a password, stuff like that, that information is stored in in the server database, right? My own server database. I'm not going to store that information on chain because uh, it I could do that, but then there is something, there is a causality that will come because of it, because there's a limit to how much information you can actually store on chain, and the APIs that are there for you to information. Again, without going too technical, let me give you a very small example, right? um, Hive or Ethereum or Binance, whatever APIs they have, they're fixed, right? You're only capable of doing X, 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 and Y, right? There is no flexibility there. You have to work with it. As a project owner, right? Maybe I have other requirements, right? Now, obviously, I could, go to the GitHub, right, and send push requests. Like, guys, can you like throw this in, or I made this. Can you guys like incorporate in within your API so you can use it? Or I can just make my own API with my own server and my own database. So in terms of flexibility for the project owner, Web3 is still lacking in providing that tool which allows the project owner, right, or a developer like myself, to completely take or completely store all the information on chain and retrieve all the information off on the chain, right? For a game, it's still not possible yet, but I'm expecting it to be possible within the next few years.
Okay, okay, interesting thoughts there. One, let me ask this question, just backing off from blockchain a little bit. What do you think about IPFS, the decentralized file storage, IPFS? I know people have used it for videos. Even I know some projects that are trying to integrate that into blockchain. But would you consider that Web3?
Well, here's the thing, right? That depends on the type of IPFSs it is. There's certain IPFSs that have multiple nodes all over the world, where each of the people are not connected with each other. They're all decentralized, right? And the information is taken from an API, right? And there's a front end, whatever you want to call about it. There's some IPFS like that. Now, in those cases, IPFSs like those are something I would consider decentralized and therefore Web3, right? Uh, because you need a wallet to connect to it, right? And there's a node system and everything. But most of them, I'm going to talk about 95% are centralized, where they have their own servers all over the world. It's in their control, right? And they're just taking the data however they want, which is completely fine. I mean, it's just like Netflix, right? Netflix has their own IPFS system that they've designed in-house that they're using. So Amazon, they have their own system. So that's my basically take on that regular topic.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I mean it's all just protocols, right? And it's how we use the protocol. So and if we get back to blockchain here, Bitcoin has a blockchain that's open source and anybody can create a fork and edit it however they want. And we've got Bitcoin Cash, we've got Bitcoin Zero, we got Super Bitcoin, Bitcoin Diamond, and anybody can do it. And if it has value to them or it has value to other people, it will continue to exist as long as it has some value. So I love the example that Amazon and Netflix have taken the IPFS protocol. They've tailored it to their own use. They need it to be, uh, highly deliverable. They need it to be available in different regions. They've set up their own centralized servers using this protocol, which obviously then is not Web3, even though it is decentralized in a certain way. It's centrally decentralized. It's centrally controlled. They control their version of the protocol. And so I guess the first secret of Web3 is that we're all still figuring it out. Would you say that that's true?
I mean, we are in a very, very early stage in terms of tools available for developers, right? Tools are being made on a daily basis, and the amount of advancement that has happened in software engineering in these last 30 years is astronomical, right? And I'm expecting the same type of evolution to happen within the next 10 years. So yeah, I mean, you are very early, because if these 10 years are anything like the first 30 years, the last 30 years, then we are talking about a huge, huge evolution, right? If you're 18 right now, in 10 years, you'll be 28, right? Meaning if you get it now, you're going to have a good future later. If you're 18 now, in 20 years, you're going to be 38, right? And that's still young. I mean, considerably. Uh, and at now is a good time to get into Web3, because of the way the tools are being made and created to accommodate new and new development.
Okay, okay. I want get into Web3. You had a call to action there, but I want to break that down a little bit. There's more than one way to get into Web3. And I think what I'm hearing from you, you're a developer, so and that's good. I'm really happy to have you, whose experience is kind of the other side of the coin from mine. Um, and just to mention this, I've heard people say of Spirit Surge, I've heard people say, some devs are front end stack, full stack, back end. Um, they say Spirit Surge is monster stack. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I think that means you know everything. Is that right? You know everything?
Okay, that's a monster stack. Okay, that's fun. Um, I don't think there's a term developer. Term full stack referred to the time when you could do front and back end database, right? If you could do that, and you could use a framework like React, Vue, Angular, right? You were considered a full stack, right? But you throw Unity in there, you throw Unreal Engine in there, you throw blockchain in there, right? And that just becomes five things, and which are equally deep. I mean, Unity is extremely complex, right? Because even if you know C sharp, it doesn't matter. You need to know how Unity works. The whole other tools, framework that is established, right? So um, it's just that there's not a term invented yet for people who can do all five, which is gaming, gaming engines, front end, back end, database, and blockchain. Um, if there is,
Well,
I haven't heard about it yet.
I think
A
that's the
monster stack
monster
is a good word.
stack. That's the monster stack, right?
It totally depends on who's coining the term. If developers coin it, it sticks. If
Got
it's someone else, then it doesn't stick. So
God
let's see.
Godzilla stack. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that your invitation to get involved in Web3 is from a developer point of view. This is a growing world. There's going to be jobs available. There's going to be entrepreneurial opportunities available. There are teams that are looking for people that know about this stuff. So your invitation, if I'm not wrong, is really for getting involved, is learning about it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just think about this. As a developer, if I have a community moderator who already knows what kind of language I'm using or what complexity I'm facing while making the project, and he can communicate it effectively to customers, and that's just amazing. I mean, that kind of guy is number one for me to hire, because he's just taking care of my point right there and then. And there's a age-old adage, right, where they say, if you want to get into the company, or if you want to get someone's business, or you want to sell something to someone, solve their pain point. And it's the same thing here. If you're coming in to my project, let's say for instance, and you're not a developer, right? But you're coming in with the knowledge of what blockchain is, what programming languages are, or you know what how blockchain works, or what kind of what are advantages, pros and cons. That automatically puts you top of my list because I know I don't have to waste my time teaching this person. Um, he's he's going to take things over by himself, and that is so just absolutely and utterly encouraged from my side. Start learning about Web3. Doing it now is better than doing it later, right? Doesn't matter if you're doing it bad, right? But it's better than doing nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I just that segue is really nice. So my side might be more of an investment perspective, and when I've gotten involved in projects, I'm not a developer, but I've had to learn to go into a GitHub and see when is the most recent pull. I can make a fork, I can save code, I can follow command line instructions, and so even if you're not a developer, you don't consider that you ever want to be a developer, you're not attracted to the learn to code. I would encourage even those people, like Spirit Surge is saying, to become a good communicator, to become a good business development consultant, to even to reach out and make connections in this world. You need to understand at least a little bit about what you're doing. I had just a common anecdote the other day. Talking, I was fixing my car, and some guy was saying, "Yeah, I went to the hardware store, and there's this young girl, and she assured me that this is the right nut for my screw." And I said, "No, that's not the right nut. This doesn't has it needs a different set of threads." And she assured me, and then the boss came out, and I said, "Hey, boss, listen, I need the special thread set for my nut." And he said, "Yeah, listen, young lady, I understand you're a good salesman, but please listen to this guy. We need this other thing." And so I commented, I said, it used to be that to work in a hardware store, you had to have some experience with hardware, either some experience with being a mechanic, and it's not that we don't want more participation. We need salesmen, we need customer service agents. But if you're going to be skilled and successful in any industry, it really helps if you know about that industry, right? And that can be learned on the job. And that's how I've learned it. I've learned it on the job, and willingness to get your hands dirty, so to speak, to open up a command line, to get in the GitHub, to follow along. What you don't understand, go to Wikipedia, go to Google. What is Python? What is the difference between Python 3 and Python 2? I have no idea what they're talking about. But next time I will, because I did the Google search, I read a little bit about it, and I'm making myself more valuable. So don't, even if you're not a developer, don't run away from code. Don't run away from technical discussions. Kind of lean into it. See if you can figure it out. Because to me, and you could correct me if you disagree, to me, the biggest issue is the separation. It's a communication gap between developers and, we could say, clients or pitchmen or people with the ideas, and they have an idea and it's a great idea and I'm going to sell you on this idea. But are you able to communicate that idea in a series of steps in the right order that makes this developable and deliverable? Would you agree that that communication gap between technical and non-technical is one of the biggest issues facing this space?
Well, yeah, because um, one of the things I actually want to touch here as a developer, right? As person who is consistently sitting down and reading documentation, reading books, because I'm also a founder, so I also have some obligations besides being a developer. And one of the things that I've had the most trouble with was communicating to the people, right? Or communicating to people who don't know about our project. And honestly speaking, um, I remember when I was doing the first post for Surgeon Gaming back in November. Um, I wrote the post and I sent it to my partner interpretist, right? Who, by the way, is an amazing communicator. And what he looked at it, he looked at it, he said, "This is trash," right? And I consider myself a good writer, considerably. But he looked at it, he said, "It's trash," right? You have written everything in a monologue form, right? That is not professional communication, and he's right. I mean, on hindsight, I was in such a hurry at that time. Like I was so excited and pumped. Let me get this post out. Let me tell the world about Surgeon Gaming, right? That I overlooked all of these things. And this is also due to the fact because I had done so much development already that I was just at that point, just saying, "Oh, I need to show this to the world. I've done an amazing job. I worked 4 months at it, and it's so amazing. I need to show it to the world." And I kind of lost the whole sight of how a post should be written from perspective of a company, right? And this information, for people who are listening to this podcast, who are writing posts, everything, who think themselves as good writers, writing from a perspective of a company is very different from writing from your own perspective, right? Giving your own opinion, giving your own judgment about it. And that's why it is very important that you diversify yourself in that particular field, right? If you're a writer, diversify yourself, right? Learn how to write from the perspective of a company, right? Learn how to do professional writing. Why you say it's not only for the people who are reading this. In the future, if you are as a company going go and raise money, you need to have professional communicated content portfolio that you can show to the people who want to with you, whether it's angel investors, the venture capitalists, right? And so you have to think long, and that's why no matter what happens, there's I know there are a lot of people shouting about AI is going to do this, AI is going to do whatever is AI going to do. That's fine, but no one can take the place of a person who has studied the craft. That's all I'm going to say.
No, fantastic. And I think so. I think that we've made the invitation wide enough. This is not just for one type of person or another. This space is big and it's growing, it's wide. And I hope that as we get into the next upward cycle here, this invitation remains open. Learn before necessarily you risk your money. Learn because that learning is valuable in a number of different ways. Um, I think this is a good point to close the door. Definitely join us next time. We're going to be focusing next time on this new and fascinating technology called NFTs. Uh, Anything else you want to mention, Spirit Surge, before we lock this one down?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to the potential people who are creating their project. Losing money is fine. You can always remake money. But if you lose your reputation once, you're done. Remember that.
Ooh, brought it home. That's it. That's right, guys. Protect your reputation above all else. And this is Eco and Spirit Surge saying, see you next time.